The team are all gathered for, I think, what's going to be one of the best lectures in lockdown 2020. We've got people joining us from all over the place, from as far afield as Doha, Dublin, and even England. So we've got people here joining us who perhaps haven't been involved with one of the Lockdown 2020 webinars. So let me just tell you a wee bit about it. We decided to run these webinars to keep us all amused and learning. So we've got a combination of both clinical lectures and non-clinical lectures, subjects as far afield as Star Trek, running, Arshad Ali's cooking course, Phil Friel being a master chef. We've really managed to cram in a huge amount into 5 weeks, and next week will be our last week of lockdown 2020. So today we're managing to combine two things: some clinical knowledge about southern implants, and Steve is going to talk to us about his passion for the South African barbecue, aka the Braai, which those of us who have been fortunate enough to be on a southern implants trip to Johannesburg will have experienced at Southern Implants. As you know, these webinars are raising money for the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice in Glasgow. Thank you so much to everybody who has donated already. As things stand, we have raised £21,500, and it would be great if over the next week or so we can get that figure up to over £25,000. So please, I'll put the donate button up now, and if you can click on the donate button, the big blue button, and donate to our fantastic cause. Before Steve starts, I want to try and give you another reason to donate, and not just the superb presentation. I'm going to tell you a wee story about Steve before we start. He's a very well-known... No, well, you know, people would expect this. So Steve's a really, really well-known face in the world of not just implant dentistry and dentistry in the UK, Ireland, and much further afield. But I didn't appreciate quite how well Steve Snook is known until last summer when I was in my first ever cruise. My wife and daughter, after years of nagging me, finally got me to go on a cruise. And anyway, so we were it was Queen Mary, it was lovely, and it was a gorgeous day. I was on the deck and I was in the jacuzzi beside the pool and keeping myself to myself. Anyway, there were these two guys from Johannesburg sitting there just chatting away, and I was keeping myself to myself, and they'd have a few drinks and they were chatting. And I said, where are you? And he said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Scotland. And where are you from? Well, I'm from Johannesburg. And so just two random guys. Anyway, they said, oh, that's interesting. Back in March, we were over in Scotland, staying in the Isle of Bute. And I thought, that's strange. South African people in the Isle of Bute. Why would they be in the Isle of Bute? Anyway, they were seeing friends. Now, they didn't actually know Steve, but they met Steve in a bar, okay, in Dunoon or somewhere like that, I don't know. So the South African friends must have known Steve, and so they met Steve in the bar. So they knew about this South African guy living in the Isle of Bute, who was to do with implants from South Africa. And I said, that's amazing, what a small world it is. I'm on my first ever cruise in a jacuzzi in the middle of, I don't know, we're near outside Boston or something like that, and these guys randomly knew Steve. So that just shows how well-known Steve is. And the thing that really let me know that these guys did know Steve is, said, was he a really, really loud guy that couldn't stop talking? I said, they've met Steve. And that really, it was an amazing story about Steve. So Steve, thank you so much for taking your time to present this, your top tips from the Braai, and thank you very much to Southern Implants for supporting this webinar. Over to you, mate.
Clive, thank you very much indeed for inviting me. I must say I'm very humbled that you did so. And of course, it's always a lot of fun to talk about stuff that you're passionate about. So the Braai is obviously something I'm passionate about. and obviously so are implants. But I think before we get into the presentation, it's important that we understand the problem. And you might look at me and say, well, what's the problem? Well, we've got to understand what the issue is before we get into this. And I'll just see, Clive, is my presentation up there somewhere? Maybe I'm hitting the wrong button here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so in South Africa, there's a big cohort of people who are excellent at braaiing, very good cooks, and this is a national sport. But there's probably an equal number of people who are not so good at braaiing. And if they mention the fact to their wives that they're going to have a braai, the rolling of eyes happens, and this is a very stressful day, which is, it's not how it needs to be. And so let me see, I found this thing on the internet, and actually this speaks to that cohort of people who are not very good at this. So the woman goes and buys the food, she comes home, she prepares the salad, gets the house ready, gets everything sorted out. The man makes the fire. The woman gives him the meat, and he puts it on the braai. And actually, this picture on the right here is a classic, because people who don't understand how to braai, this is often what happens. Their fire goes mad, and they burn all the meat, and it's not very tasty at all. They drink lots of beer, and they put the fire out with the beer, of course, just to try and save the meat a little bit. And then the man takes the meat off the braai, gives it to the woman, who serves it up and clears and does all the dishes. And then all of the guests thank the man for the great braai. And the man thinks he's a wonderful fellow because he's given his wife the day off and he's doing the cooking. And this is true. So I think there's probably a fair cohort of people on this side of the world as well who might fall into this category. So let's go and fix that. This picture was taken when I was 22. So you can see I've aged a little bit, maybe ahead of my time. And, one of the reasons for that is I spent a lot of my life doing stuff that is governed by laws that if you break these laws, the consequences are dire. And so I always try and understand laws before I get into anything. Because, and I'll give you a little taste of these things. I think to be good braaiers, good implantologists, we've got to get the basics right. And if you do the basics right, you'll get all of it right most of the time. So we've got to understand the laws of fire. We've got to understand the rules of the braai. And most importantly, with a little bit of tongue in cheek, we have to understand braai etiquette. The tong master is the absolute king around the braai. There's only one. There's a pecking order. Just like on a ship, there's only one captain. On a plane, there's one captain. Very important. So, Clive, if you just play that video there, please.
Okay, Steve, just remember to turn your microphone off.
I would not bother showing this film to any woman. They would never understand it. This is men's business. Serious men's business. Mac was at the braai, and Stu was at the braai, and I was at the braai. 3 men standing around a braai, sipping beer, staring at boerewors, rolling them backwards and forwards, never leaving them alone. We were drawn there like moths to a flame. The braai was a powerful gravitational force, a mad magnet.
Hey, Braai,
Stu said the thin ones could use a turn. I said, yeah, I reckon the thin ones could use a turn. Mac said,
they could definitely do with a turn.
It was a unanimous turning decision. Mac was the tong master, a true artist. He gave a couple practice snaps with his long silver tongs before moving in, prodding, teasing, and with an elegant flick of his wrist, rolling them onto their little backs. Unless the tong man would have flicked too hard, the sausages would have gone full circle back to where they started. Kevin was passing us. He heard the siren song sizzle of the sausages. The braai was calling, beckoning. We said how's it and began the braai shuffle. Mac shuffled to the left, Stu shuffled to the left, I shuffled to the left, Kevin slipped in beside Stu. We sipped our beers. Now there were 4 of us staring at the burry. Mac gave me the nod, my cue. I was the second in command. I had to take the raw sausages out of the plastic bag and lay them on the braai. The chipolatas were tiny. They could easily slip down between the grill, falling into the molten hot netherworld below. Carefully I laid them sideways across the grill. Mac snapped his tongs with approval.
What do you ever think? Good work. Nice one.
There was no greater braai honour. Luke came along. The irresistible lure of the braai pulled him in too.
How is it? Hey.
Stu was the fork pronger. He had the fork to prong the tough hides of the Free State's finest boerewors, and he showed a lot of promise, stabbing away eagerly, leaving perfect little vampire holes up and down the skins.
You know, I'd thought they'd have cooked a lot better if you didn't keep poking.
In the silence, you could have heard a chipolata drop. This newcomer was a rabble-rouser, bringing in his crazy ideas from the outside. He didn't understand the hierarchy. First the tongue master, then the boerele, then the fork pronger. Everyone below was just a watcher.
I'll just,
Maybe eventually they'll move up the ladder, but for now, don't rock the Weber. Then Wendy came up.
Smells good, guys.
She was trying to jostle into the circle. We closed ranks, but she was keen, heading for the only available space, out there on the other side. The gap in the circle where all the smoke and ashes blew. Nobody could survive the gap. Nobody had ever survived the gap. Wendy was going to try. She stood there stubbornly, smoke blinding her eyes, ashes filling her nostrils, sausage fat splattering all over her arms and face until she could take it no more. We sipped our beers. And then Mac handed me his tongs. I knew what was happening. I'd waited a long time for this moment. The abdication. The tongs weighed heavy in my hands, firm in my grip. Was I ready for the responsibility? Yes, I was. I held them up high and proud. I was the tongue master. But only until Mac got back from the toilet.
Right, are we back? Great. So a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but there's definitely some etiquette. And I have to say, we're not quite that bad with women. My sister Dina, after 36 years of diligent practice, was awarded her very own set of tongs by us. And because she's superb. In fact, she's probably better than I am at braaiing. So there are lots of good female tongue masters around as well. Right, so let's move on then. So this thing about laws, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because laws, you get laws and you get rules, and we'll go into this. But, I alluded to the fact that in my life, I've probably done a few things that I've spent lots of time dealing with laws, which are very good things. But if you get them wrong, then they can spoil your day. So this over here, that's you might be able to see gliding over the Northumberland somewhere. It is a lovely winter's day and there's snow. There's a little mountain range there. And I'm looking there for lift. So very much understanding gravity, very much understanding lift and drag, and looking for ways to stay up in the air and using all of these things. So when you're in situations where it could really spoil your day badly if you don't pay attention to the laws, then it focuses you. This one here, that was actually after one of the Branimar courses. A good friend of mine, Richard Smith, owns a lovely Bosbok old warbird aeroplane, and the silly fool lets me fly it sometimes, and that was straight after one of those courses. But again, you get a very good understanding of gravity, laws, proper laws. In the army, as an airborne soldier, again, you become very well aware of these things, crossing oceans in yachts when things go wild, as they sometimes do. You become very tuned in. Moving on a little bit, playing with explosives and getting rid of landmines and stuff, as I did a few years ago in Angola. It focuses the mind to laws and consequences of getting them wrong. And there's other fun stuff, fast roping in the army. And this is an interesting one. So when you jump out of an aeroplane, you're always trying to build in an extra safety margin. And if I just go back one, you'll have a look here. You see I'm wearing a little reserve parachute, okay? And you jump out and when you jump out, this is a static line jump. It takes about 200 or 300 foot for your parachute to deploy. So stay with me now and do the maths. In an operational jump, you obviously, you want to be in the air in a very short space of time because you don't want to get shot out of it and you want to be on the ground very quickly. So an operational jump, you might jump out at 500 foot or 600 foot. If it takes 300 foot for your parachute to open, and then you look up and discover, oh, it hasn't gone so well, by which time you've dropped another 100 foot, and then you pull your reserve parachute, you're going to hit cumulus granitus before that thing's open. So it's of little comfort. And so always in the army, we very rarely jump from such low altitudes, but we would always try and bond with the pilots, just give us an extra 100 foot, give us an extra 200 foot, because there's safety there. The same with flying airplanes, flying gliders, altitude, when you've got altitude, you've got lots of options and there's lots of safety and you can always make a plan. So we always, instinctively, I'm always trying to build in safety margins. So have a look at this, rules versus laws. So what are rules? Rules are things that, protocols, guidelines, even legislation, government, these are man-made things. And, there's a bit of leeway. This isn't like if you disobey this thing, there's probably nothing really dire that's going to happen to you. If my son is 20 years old and we're in America and he's not allowed to have a beer until he's 21, I would probably take my chance with that rule, that man-made rule. And there's probably not going to be a dire consequence. Go across to laws, and this is what I'm talking about now. So gravity, absolutely, I know that I don't mess with gravity, and I pay huge respect to that thing, and I always try and build in a safety margin where gravity is concerned, whether it's in a plane, a glider, a parachute, whatever it is. And then the fire triangle, which we'll get to in the next slide, I think. These are laws. Without these elements, things don't work. In implants, biologic width, and I'm sure everybody understands that concept, and if you don't, it's something that you really need to, because if you don't put your implant deep enough, Mother Nature will remove bone to create space for the biologic width. And that's an absolute starting point. Interproximal space, biology, all of these things are laws. Pay attention to the laws. So let's get back to the Braais now. And back to the basics, the fire triangle, we all know this. So you need these three elements to have a good fire. You need oxygen, you need heat and fuel. And if you remove any one of those elements, the fire will die. So keep that in mind. Have a look at this range of braais now, because this talks about selecting a braai. And I suppose to be able to select a braai, how do you select a braai? Is it on price? Is it on shape? Is it because it looks like it's got lots of gadgetry to it? How do we select a braai? And you can see these are all braais doing similar kinds of things. That one's a bit of an outlier. We'll get back to that one. But I think, like implant systems, if we understand good designs, then it can guide our choices a lot. So let's look closely at this braai here. Notice this little thing here. These are vents. So underneath there's air vents. So the air gets sucked up inside. Critical importance here. Look at this. There's a grid above the floor of the braai. So this is just clear open space. And that's for the charcoal to sit on top of. Absolutely critical for a good braai. So you need this airflow here. You need this space. And you relate that back to dental implants now and implantology. Does that sound familiar? We know that if we don't have a good gap between the implant and the labial plate, for example, that airflow, it's not airflow, it's blood flow, is restricted, and that implant will fail. The bone will go. And braais are exactly the same, because these are laws. These work on the same principles and the same laws. So you have to have these elements in an implant system and in a braai. What else can I say about? So this particular one is a Weber, but we'll get onto more detail about that later. So going back to this picture, Let's have a look at these braais in terms of design. So this one here, top left, is this a well-designed braai? No. How the heck is that they're going to get a good fire going? The thing can't breathe. It's right up against the labial plate. And that is going to be a struggler. This is one of those comical moments where you see the braai master there, the tong master with his newspaper trying to fan the thing, get it going some more, putting more firelighters on. I've even seen people go woof with petrol. This is always going to be a struggle. What about this one? Yeah, again, that's got no grill underneath. Those coals are sitting flat on the deck. It's got no chance. It's a poorly designed braai that will give very mediocre results, very low heat. And, those coals wouldn't even burn out. Left to their own devices, they would just die, and they'd pretty much still be whole coals. Well, what about this one here? I can see there's a few little vents on the side. Again, those coals are sitting on the bottom. That's rubbish. Again, this one, look here, this is way too shallow to accommodate a grill underneath to raise the charcoal. Rubbish. All of those things, rubbish. Very poorly designed braais. But they were probably on special somewhere, and they sell hundreds of thousands of these every year to amateur braaiers. Right, so this to me is the daddy, the Weber braai. And that first picture I showed what is of a Weber braai, showing the ideal design. And why is it so? First of all, it's made of the right materials, and materials critically important. So this is made of a very thick, hard steel to start off with. It's then got a porcelain enamel coating. And this allows the thing to withstand 1500 degrees Celsius. It protects it from corrosion, and it protects it from burn through. And I can tell you that my braai, I've got one of these. I don't know how, I've had it years and years and years. It's neglected. This is a working tool. This isn't something that we baby and fuss over. This thing works 3 or 4 times a week, every week. And it gets left out in the snow and the rain and the summer and the winter. And it doesn't rust. It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. It's made of the right stuff. It's been over-engineered, which is exactly what we try and do at Southern Implants as well. We over-engineer everything. So the shape is right. It's got all the right breathability. It's versatile. You can cook indirectly or directly, and we'll get into that. It's simple, and it's got easy maintenance. The maintenance is an important bit, actually. So I think I'm on my second grill. I'm on my second set of vents at the bottom, because these things wear. My braai's had hundreds and hundreds of braais, and every couple of years you need to replace it. So that's important that you can. Same with your implant system. Can you get, stock bits for it? And the more you can stick to standard abutments and not having to do custom stuff, the more you've got this availability of the highest quality and at the best price. So when I need a grill or something, I just go online, and the next day it pops in through the door, and we're off again for another few years. Right, so this thing is very, very important. It's as important as the braai itself. And it's these starter chimneys. And I put there buy nice or buy twice. And it's the absolute truth. You'll see some of these things in Aldi's or Tesco's or wherever that look just like this from the outside, but they're rubbish. Have a look at Weber. Look at this design now. Here's a cross section. Look at how this dome effect here. It gives the firelighters a lovely breathing space. It elevates the briquettes off there. This thing is just breathing, and I can tell you that they've got 2 in this picture here, which I got off the internet. They've got 2 firelighters. I'm an adopted Scot. I just use one, and it's perfectly fine, and it gets going very quickly. It's these little things, this heat-resistant handle. You've got this other handle here, which helps you to, you can hold it with your left hand, and it helps you just to tip the coals in without any drama and without any fuss. So absolutely, it's a little bit more expensive, but buy once, and that's it. You've got it for a few years. And it's the perfect thing. Perfect design, you can see, over-engineered. Very important bit of kit. when we look at implants, it's the same principles. Whatever system you're using, what are they made of? Is it grade 4? Is it grade 5 alloy? What's in the alloys? Is it, you got some vanadium in there? All these other things? You got what's in there? What surface is it? We know absolutely that all other systems are limited to supercrestal angle correction by way of abutments. What is the evidence for that particular system in the particular treatment that you're wanting to provide? And how many compromises are you prepared to accept? So, at Southern, we very much like the Weber. I see our system as the Weber of implants. We absolutely over-engineer everything. We only use pure grade 4 titanium, and it's cold worked. It's about 30% stronger than the regular grade 4. We don't touch the alloys. We don't like it because, in the presence of a imperfect pH, which lots of us have from time to time, these things corrode at 10 times the speed of a regular grade 4. And of course, we've got the option of supracrestal or subcrestal angle correction, and there's some big benefits to that. And of course, our designs, much like the Weber, has been designed for that breathability underneath. It's a key part of that design compared with all those other Braais. We've got implants that do the same thing, that allow more breathability or better blood circulation in terms of our inverter implant, which set us up for long-term success. So let's get back to braaiing again now. So what is a braai? If a South African says to you, come and have a braai, and in South Africa, it can take on a few. Someone might say, come for a chop and a dop, chop and dop. And there's a culture of bring and braai. In other words, you could invite all your mates and you just tell them chop and dop. And that means everyone brings their own meat and everyone brings their own booze. And you get there and you all cook together and eat together. And it's all just a big, it's a fun thing. So, let me show you what a braai is. This is a braai. And it might surprise you to see that it's not about the food. It really isn't. The braai is a process. It's a joyous thing. Right from the time of starting to prepare the meat, getting it in the marinade, setting it all out. That's a sport. And you'll find you'll be chatting and having a beer with whoever's there as you prepare all these things. Getting the fire ready, cleaning the braai out from the last time to make sure it breathes properly. Getting all that going. It's a sport. It's part of the socialization. It's part of the thing. The food that comes at the end of it is almost secondary. Although, of course, there's no reason why that shouldn't be spectacular too. But I would say it's not the highlight of the braai. The braai is this. In Zulu, there's a word called kaluma, and we get together and we kaluma. And there's some lovely memories I just picked up off my Facebook. But this crew here are my Irish, great Irish friends and customers who came to Butte to play golf. And literally, we're very fortunate. We live next door to a fantastic pub. And the plan was to have a braai. And of course, we did have a braai. And then we were going to go next door and, go to the pub. But, once the fire's going, nobody moved. And in fact, I shouldn't say this too loud, but the pub next door just served us over the wall, over the back garden wall. And so we had our pints of Guinness there. But guys, this is a braai. If I go back to this picture here, that's not a braai. That's not a braai. So you don't make a fire. You don't have all that sport, and banter around the fire. There's nothing to prod and poke and chat about and smoke and, so that all looks very good, but to me, that's not a braai. That's a braai. Right, so let's go back to this again. So all braais can be made to work adequately. If you understand the principles we've spoken about, you saw that picture in the beginning of the design of the Weber, how the coals are lifted and it can breathe, etc. Any braai, so any one of those braais, as someone who knows braais and who understands the laws of fire, I could make any of those braais work very well. So those ones that didn't have a grid on the bottom, I would have improvised in a heartbeat. And I've actually done this at the Southern factory before because I saw the one braai there didn't have a grid at the bottom for the coals. And I went and grabbed Solly. I said, come, Solly, help me. We need to find some rocks and bricks. And he found me some grids at the back, and we did that. And so we made that braai work for us. And many, all implant systems are the same. There's systems that are designed very well and to do a certain job, and there's systems that you can get all these jobs, but you need to do additional procedures or make a plan to get the laws right, or get the laws in your favor, where the design hasn't taken into account what you're trying to achieve with it. So, for example, here's a Weber Braai, here's our system, and this is the coaxial implants there, and you can see we're correcting the angles within the implants. So back in the day, implants, they weren't designed to be tilted. Everything was straight, and people would take great pride in putting the implants in parallel. But then we realized actually there's a lot of benefit to tilting them and getting a better AP spread, etc. So people just tilted straight implants. But then to correct the angles, we had to make these angled abutments so that they became restorable. And so that's, if you've got a Braai like that, or an implant system like that, well, you've got to do a bit of a bodge like that. Much like I did with Al Sadi there, having to get some bricks and get, just make a plan so that we could get the fire to stick to the laws and have a good trouble-free Braai. So similar principles. And this is how I see it. You can either get a Braai that's right from the start. It's been designed for that, like the Weber. It's perfect. Or you can get one that's kind of hasn't really, maybe in its day when it was designed, it did the perfect job. But then as we learn more and as applications change and needs change, so we start tilting implants, for example, you need an LPG conversion. I see angled abutments as an LPG conversion to bring it up to speed to be able to deliver these treatments. So the Weber to me is this here, and Southern Implant System to me is this here. It's been designed from the start to make things straightforward. So let's talk about biomechanics quickly, and along the similar lines. So I'm just I'm not a clinician. I'm not a bright guy. So I like to do practical things, and this is how I see angled implants. So this is just standing on top of my step on the patio there, flat-footed. So if you imagine now the forces are coming here, you can see the screw, the biting forces are there, and this is very comfortable. I could stand there all day like that. When you tilt a straight implant and you correct that angle, there's a tiny screw coming out at this angle there, but the forces are coming up here. And that is the same as standing on the edge of a step like that. And I can tell you, even just taking this picture, it was within a minute or two, because I had a few shots at it. I was getting very tired. I couldn't have done that for much longer. And when we talk about longevity and minimizing complications, so screw loosening, all this sort of stuff that happens to when there's the biomechanical forces aren't optimal, we can honestly and truly reduce these things significantly just by standing flat, which is what these implants do. And we know from the finite elements analyses that they're under about 1/3 of the stress that these guys are under, because the mechanical forces are just right. So yes, all systems, you can achieve the end goal one way or the other, but maybe it's better just to choose one that's been designed for it right from the start. Yeah, so what I like about this picture too, so this is back to the Weber Braai now. I alluded earlier to the two types of fires. You get the direct method, in other words, you put the meat directly above the coals, or you get the indirect method. So you could have the coals on that side and have the meat over here on that side. So no coals underneath the meat, very useful. And you can put the lid on and have it like an oven, indirect cooking. This type of Braai, you've only got one option, really. There isn't a lid to go on there. You couldn't use it as an oven. And pretty much, it's you go in the direct method here. So again, in terms of systems, we're talking implant systems, all other systems do this. The Southern system allows this and that, direct and indirect. Okay, so lighting the fire, and unfortunately these are all come up at once, because this. But It's as simple as that. You see there, I'm a adopted Scot, so one fire lighter, put the chimney over, fill it up with coals. So from point 1 to point 3 there takes 30 seconds maybe. And then you go and have a chat and a beer. And you kaluma, because this is what the braai is all about. It's all just part of the sport. When your coals look like this, that's the right time to take them off. A common mistake people make is they take the coals off too soon. They see that maybe they're red and they're glowing and they think, I've got it. Don't be tempted to do that. Let it get to this gray bit, because if you take them off too soon, all of the sort of paraffin and stuff that's been on the outside there hasn't quite burnt off, and that might affect the flavor of your food. So really just be patient. This will take maybe half an hour, and it's one beer really, or two depending on the company. Very important point. Now, very few people do this, and very few people know about this. This stuff here, skoenflab, it's a good South African word invented by my brother-in-law, Wayne. You've got to get rid of the skoenflab. So you'll see on the coals is this gray coating of dust. And that's what happens immediately when you tip it in from the chimney into the braai. Your coals will have skoenflab. And you must blow that off. Just 2 or 3 very good breaths, blow it off to the side, and immediately you'll see your coals just do this. And my Weber's got a lid on with a thermometer, and honestly, if you don't do that, you get about 100 degrees less heat. And the skoenflab is a terrible thing, and I like it. To me, it's the same as degranulating. If you don't degranulate before you put your implant in, you're going to have trouble. This thing is going to give you trouble. So removing the skoenflab is like degranulating in implantology. Critical step that very few people know about. Sometimes you've braaied lots of meat and the fire's not quite what it should be. What you can do is just blow off skoenflab again, and you'll see you'll get an extra half hour or so out of those coals, enough to get your meat done if you're cooking a big batch. Right, so these are the decisions that one has to make quite early on. You got to choose whether you're going to go directly over the coals, or if you're going to go indirect like this. And obviously that's a direct fire there. That's all direct, and that's the option with that one. So there's also the option of going hybrid, and a lot of the stuff I do is hybrid. So usually I'll put the coals to one side to give me space like this on the other side, because I might want to, particularly with steaks or chops or anything like that, you want to get them on these hot coals here and sear them and seal those juices inside and get a nice cut on the meat. But you definitely also want to not overcook or anything like that. And you might want to just leave it on the side here, sort of in the warming drawer. Right, let's have a look at some complications here. And that, again, it's a pity I've given you the answers here. It's all come up at once. But, immediately just looking at that, I suppose like any good implantologist looking at one of your own early cases, you look back and you think, wow, what was I thinking with this case? And you've left this out and left that out, and or looking at other cases that you may have inherited as well. And we've all got these things, and you think, oh, what was I thinking? But very quickly here, as an old braaier, I can see problems already. So one, there's nothing to lift the charcoal up with. So that fire is going to be struggling right from all the way through, and not generating much heat. 2, look at all that skoenflab there. It's full of skoenflab. So it's, besides the fact that it's struggling because it can't breathe, there's just lots and lots of skoenflab. So this is just a battling fire. So to fix it, you could just, if that was me coming at a friend's house and I walked into that, I would politely ask him if he needed help. Just lift the grids off and get rocks or bricks or something, and get some sort of grid up there and put the coals on top, and then that fire would be fantastic. And obviously degranulate, remove the skoenflab. And next time, probably choose a better designed braai or implant system. It's a key point, this actually, and getting back to if you look at that whole series of braais from one of those earlier slides, someone who understands braais and understands fire and the laws of fire and how the design should be can make any one of those braais work. And it's the same with implants. You get a good experienced implant surgeon, he can make any system work, absolutely, and work very well. But it requires a few bodges along the way and a few things that have to be done to get it to work optimally. Whereas a system that's been designed, right from the start to do a certain job, you don't have those hoops to jump through. So let's have a. Hello, Clive. I can't hear.
Sorry, I've just moved outside, and I just want to have a wee. I'm just going to interrupt for a wee second. I've got a question to ask, if you don't mind. Okay.
Sure.
I'll just. So tell me, right? Just, have you got a view on gas? So we've got charcoal, and we've got gas. I mean, I used to be like the old caveman thing, right? And I've got my tongs here, right? And I've got the beer, right? But so I used to be like, really, you have to like have the charcoal, and you must have it. But there is a kind of practicality of, you've been in, you want to come at night time, you want to just quickly turn the braai or barbecue, as I tend to call it, on. Yeah. I mean, is that a complete heresy to use gas?
It's not. I mean, I know what you mean. You just want something quick, and you want to just do that. And I suppose you can do that then. Personally, if I just want something quick, I'll just do it on the cooker. Right. And again, it depends what you're going to cook.
I think it's quite handy, particularly if the weather's not great or it's winter, and you still want to barbecue something, because I think you still do get the taste. I used to think you don't get the same taste, but I think you can get a decent taste from it. And I just wanted to, and also want to see really how clever you are if you can manage to tie an implant analogy in with the gas versus charcoal.
Yeah. So the gas. I agree with you, Clive. When I was in the States in February, and of course everything there is gas, and Lars, my American colleague, did the cooking, and I thought, oh, here we go. It was one of those big gas braais, and I thought, here we go, and the meat was fantastic. So I had to eat humble pie there. So absolutely, that can taste very good. The thing that's changed my mind, my life really, and living in Scotland, where the weather's not always great, is that starter, the chimney. So we braai all the time, honestly, just multiple times a week. Summer, winter, it doesn't matter. And the key to us being able to do that is, it takes me 30 seconds to, even in the rain, go outside, put the chimney on, and light it, and I go back inside and have a beer and carry on chatting and listen to music or do whatever we're doing. And once those coals are ready, it's a matter of tipping them into the Weber. If it's raining, I always do an indirect fire with a lid on. So very much the same concept as your gas braai. And it cooks in the rain. We cook in the snow. It doesn't matter. Actually, if you're not going to be out there with the fire, it's irrelevant. That chimney just makes it so easy, and you're cooking with the lid on, and you go in an hour's time and fetch your food, and it's magnificent. So that's the way we do it. But of course, your gas one, I was humbled by my American colleague. His meat was delicious. Right. So let's have a look quickly at the.
Steve, I've got another question coming in. Yeah. I said I would interrupt you from time to time. Yeah, sure. Question for Steve at end. Well, I'll ask it now. A question from Jamie. Recommendation of a South African red for a braai.
Oh, well, Jamie, this is a big pressure question, because I've got to tell you, I've had one of the best steaks and some of the best red wine in my life at Jamie's house, and he's a braai master himself. And so this is a trick question, Jamie, and I'll send you a rude WhatsApp after the one. But so any Ruderberg or Kanonkop or any of those are fantastic. There's so many good South African red wines. And really, I think, in fact, Jamie, he should give us a recommendation of what he thinks, because he's a proper wine master. Right.
So Jamie, if you want to just post up on the message board what your recommendations are. If anybody else has any wine or beer recommendations, put them up. If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Steve, please just post. Somebody's put their hand up to ask a question, which is Jamie. So Jamie, I'll try and get you to come into the room. He's not wanting to speak, but you can just post them. So if anybody's got any questions that you want to ask Steve, put them in the chat board and we'll shout them out as we go along.
That's great. Good. Yeah, so going back to the breathability and design, have a look at this. The Weber, we understand all about this, and in an implant perspective, this look at this as blood flow, and so that's exactly what we've done through clever design. So here in this extraction socket, we've got an aggressive taper with a nice diameter implant here where we've got lots of bone, so we can be sure of getting a good primary stability. But this coronal bit here, we've narrowed that right down to facilitate this gap over here, this gap, that's that gap. And that, if you look at the work of Chu and Tano and Buser and all of these guys, it's published after published, this is law. You need at least 1.5 millimeters, 2 is better, to have long-term success with these cases. And so this implant is specifically designed for that job. And when we go back to work, please let that be soon. Post lockdown, I think the shift is going to be very much towards immediate treatments, accelerated treatments, and perhaps even going beyond what we consider to be immediate now. So at the moment, immediate might mean to you tooth out, implant in, come back in 3 months' time to restore it, or it might mean to you tooth out, implant in, immediate temporary crown. And when you're doing this sort of work, this is when an implant like this becomes your friend, because it's a little bit like jumping out the plane at 500 feet. If you can build in that extra safety margin to be sure you're going to get this here, it just puts extra factors in your favor. And we're dealing with laws here. These are laws. These aren't just rules or guidelines. These are laws. So, as a good paratrooper, I would absolutely buy the pilots beers and wine and do bribery to get them just to give us an extra little bit of altitude. And that's what this implant does here with your treatments. So this is something we're going to think about. I saw another slide yesterday in another webinar so this is Costa Nikolopoulos' work, post-COVID stuff. They've been doing it for years, so they've got this workflow. But tooth out, implant in, immediate definitive restoration with a zirconia crown. One appointment, same day. That's it. Compared to 4 or 5 treatments. Now consider that you might be donning and duffing. I don't know. Maybe it's going to take. You're going to see 2 patients a day or 3. I don't know. 2. That's what the chat seems to be. And now you've got to stretch that treatment out over 4 appointments, maybe, or 4 or 5 visits if you're lucky. These are things we've got to think about. So we need to look to clever technology and implants designs to get everything in our favor that we can to provide these treatments faster and with fewer complications and with, just using standard parts. Right, so let's have a look back to the Braais now. Typical approaches, we discussed the direct sort of hybrid method. And absolutely things like steak and lamb, that's direct. I want that over the coals. I want the flames to come up and to really char that thing and to seal the juices inside. Same with lamb, same with pork chops. Indirect ways, I always do these things like chicken wings, legs of lamb, all of these other things, burgers even. And there's not too many South Africans who will admit to doing a burger on a braai. So if any of my South African mates are watching, I just put that in there for a friend, although they can be very delicious.
Steve, I think this is a really good opportunity to ask a question from Stephen Jacobs. Any tips on how best to cook fish on the braai?
Yeah, so fish is a tricky one because it's so delicate and you want to keep those flavors all in there. So I always only do fish wrapped in foil, and I keep it very, very simple. You know, some people overdo these things. So really just butter and some onions and maybe a little bit of thyme, depending on the fish, and very, very quick, you know, no longer than sort of 5 minutes. Make it a little tin foil parcel with it, seal it, and let it steam away in there for 5 minutes or so. Yeah, so that's how I would do fish. There's maybe there's some fish, game fish that I would smoke rather. So funny enough, in South Africa, there's a game fish called snook, and it's the cheapest form of protein you'll get in the Western Cape. It's a magnificent fish that, they grow quite big. They're very aggressive, lots of fun to catch, very sharp teeth. And these we would tend to smoke. So then you could, with the lid on, just put some, I would put some wood shavings, oak, whatever you can find, into the coals and let that smoke away for, not very long either, 10, 15 minutes. And that's entirely adequate. Coarse salt, I use the Malden salt. You can put that on a fish like that. So any sort of tough, when I say tough, not tough, gamey fish that's got a good sort of consistency, you can go that method, the smoking method. But yeah, generally I would be putting it on in a tinfoil parcel, not too many things with it at all. A little bit of thyme, butter, onions, and let it steam away. Right. So let's move on to there. Now, this is one of the best things that you can ever do, and it just tastes different when it's done in the braai. It's called the braai broodjie, and in English, that's the braai bread. And really, all it is, it's slices of bread buttered, but you leave the buttered side to the outside. Cheese, tomato, onion, and you get this lovely cheese spread. There's actually a biltong flavored one I've heard about, which I haven't tried myself, but magnificent. And you put these things on the braai. You can either do this right at the beginning, as a bit of a starter type thing. I tend to do it right at the end when the fire is almost, really waning now and there's not much heat coming off. That's perfect because these go very, very quickly. And you just put a few of these in your grid and you turn them. You have to watch them because they burn very carefully, very quickly, but they are absolutely delicious and a lovely, lovely accompaniment. So very simple, and there's never any of these left. These things just get snapped up. If you have one, you need another one. So let's have a look at steak because, this is perhaps one of the key things. And it's something I've never understood in the UK, is that when you buy steaks here, or even in restaurants, a lot of restaurants, you get served a steak, and they're these thin little things. And I don't understand it. When I first moved here, I went to the butcher and I said, can I have some steak, please? And he just cut the thickness he normally cuts. And I thought, sorry, I need it much thicker than that. And he looked at me as if I was mad. But it's essential. This is where the flavor comes from, and it gives you a little bit of control. Please, it must be at least an inch thick, And, you can go a little bit more than that too. Very, very important. Otherwise you just lose so much of the flavor and the things dry out very quickly. So again, material is important. Start off with the right product. Steak, I always go on a direct fire, certainly to start with. Depending on the thickness of the steak and the flow of the food, I might move it off the coals onto the indirect side if I've just wanting to delay it a little bit, or thinking that I need to give it a little bit more time to cook the inside a bit. I always salt the meat beforehand. There's some myths that says, you mustn't salt the meat because it'll dry it out. And I think that's nonsense. I don't have any clinical studies on that, but I think that's nonsense. And actually, in the absence of salt, doesn't taste right. Another thing, so any cut will do, whether it's sirloin, whether it's ribeye, fillet, pretty much rump, all of these are good cuts. And it's, again, interesting. So in the UK, rump is like a cheap cut. People seem to think that it's, not very good. In South Africa, rump is a prime cut. That's the most expensive one because it's very, very flavorsome. And, what I've learned here is that any one of these things will do. Look for meat. The sport of a braai starts in the shop, and I love going to the butcher and having a banter with him and seeing what he's got. And living on an island, of course, the provenance is strong, and he can tell me exactly which farm it's come from and which herd, and or this one didn't come from the island, that came from somewhere else. And it's part of the sport of having a braai, is the banter with the butcher. And I walk in there and he sees me and he gets a smile on his face because he knows we're going to have some sports. And it lifts my day as well because it's good. And we need to select the meat properly. And he knows now not to just cut the meat. He brings it to me and he says, where do you want it? There. And inevitably I say to him, just cut me the whole block and I'll cut it myself at home. Thank you. But it's good banter.
Steve, a couple of questions coming up on the message board. One from Stavros. Hi, Stavros. Steve, what is your favourite marinade? John Clydesdale was asking a question about what your favourite salad was. I didn't know if that was a typing mistake. I don't know why we're talking about salads, but there's a bit of debate going on about whether that was a mistake or it was for a friend. Anyway, first of all, what's your favourite marinade, and do you have a favourite salad?
Yes, I think my favourite salad is chicken. But my favorite marinade, I think the next slide I've got a slide of that, so I'll show you that there, Stavros. Any cut will do for the steaks. Just make sure it's thick enough, and look for meat that's got a bit of marbling. You really want those little marbly bits because it really adds to the flavor. Marinating adds a different touch, and I generally marinate my steaks. However, in the UK, it's another peculiar thing. Most people here just routinely, if you go to a restaurant, order a steak and pepper sauce or a sauce. And that's something I never, ever, I won't say never, I rarely do. If a steak comes and it's a thin little thing and it just looks, it hasn't come from a proper steak restaurant, I'll order a sauce then just to give it some sort of flavor, because generally the flavor's been beaten the hell out of it. So I would reserve sauces for if you're in a situation where you've been served a steak and it's not been optimally cooked and the meat isn't of adequate thickness, and so the flavor's gone out of it. But some of the best steak I've ever had, and I do this sometimes too, has got absolutely no marinade. It's just got salt and pepper. That's it. Keep it simple, and then you get the flavors of the meat. And so I really recommend that. Have a look at that cooking chart here. Obviously, we all know rare, medium, well done. Guys, honestly and truly, if you're getting to medium, I'm starting to get a little bit of a twitch then. It's acceptable, but only just, if that's what you're having to have. If you're going to medium well and well done, please order something else. You cannot do that to steak. It's impossible. It's not okay. So try and keep it, certainly for me, it would be medium rare. I think that's for a lot of people actually who enjoy meat. It's a very nice balance, and you get such beautiful flavors there. But once you go beyond medium, yeah. And there's some nice ways. You might have seen this trick before. So you can, this bit of flesh here between your thumb and your forefinger, you're wanting to test. So if you put these two together and you squeeze there, that's how a well done, medium well, medium, and rare. So when I'm checking my meat, I generally just get a fork or something and I push it, and you start to get a bit of a feel for how that does. Much like you guys who, with your implants, you understand what's going on with bone, and it gets a feel and you understand it. It becomes the same with braaiing. So just really by feeling the spring back, you can get a picture of what's going on inside there. Right, Stavros, so this is my go-to marinade, and really just olive oil, balsamic, garlic, chili, and I cheat. I must say, I use these. Lazy garlic, lazy chili. They're fantastic. They really work well. And soy sauce, Worcester sauce. Mix it all up. Salt the meat and let it just sit in there for a couple of hours. And that works very nicely. It definitely tenderizes the meat a bit, and it's got a very nice flavor to it. So that's my favorite. Yeah. So here's another thing. Spoil yourselves, guys, and it's actually even very economical. So yeah, I've got a whole fillet, and you can get a whole fillet steak like that from Tesco's or wherever you want to buy it, Morrison's or Sainsbury's, wherever you go, and it'll probably cost you about 70 or 80 pounds. And when you've got guests and you've had that sitting in the marinade, because we eat with our eyes before we eat with the food, and you've had the fire going and you've had the sports of putting the meat in the marinade while you're chatting with them, and you just see it there sitting, and it's this whole big chunk of fillet steak. It's magnificent. And people are it's got the wow factor. And, you do the whole process, and eventually you chuck this whole thing onto the fire just like that. And it sizzles, it smokes, and it is wonderful. And it doesn't take long to cook. And then, once it's cooked, you can either slice it into steaks and give people steaks, or you can chop it up into sort of finer slices like this over here. And it's just fantastic. It's you can't mess fillet up. Very difficult to mess fillet up. It's always tender. It's always good. And, if you say, 80 pounds for a chunk of meat, it's nothing. That would probably feed 8 or 9 people handsomely. Price per head, it costs you more to go to Burger King. And what a magnificent thing to do. Okay, this is one of my favorite go-tos as well. Is chicken wings. And they cost peanuts, but they're the most tasty things. I use this Nando sauce here, and literally just put them into a Ziploc bag, put some of the Nando sauce. I always get the hot one, but you could have medium as well. You get lemon and butter, you get all manner of things, but the Nando stuff is really fantastic. And this one's got that chili sort of lemony flavor to it. And literally out the punnet into the Ziploc Nando sauce. Couldn't be easier. And, get the chimney going. That takes 30 seconds. Tip the coals in, indirect braai, lid on top. Boom. Takes about half an hour. And those things are unbelievable. You can just grab them like this, and it just slides off the bone. It is fantastic. The skin is crispy outside. If we've got a big sort of crowd in, and with one braai, I can easily feed 20 or 30 people without breaking into a sweat and without working hard at all. What I do then is just get a whole bunch of chicken wings on. I'll put them on just quietly on the side with the lid on, so I'm not having to turn them, not having to look after them or anything. And while I've done that, I get another chimney going around the corner, so that chimney is getting a fresh set of coals, because as soon as those come off, then we feed people just finger food. Relax, this is a braai. And those wings just disappear very quickly. And of course, by the time those are done, that new chimney of coals is ready, and you can chuck them in, and that's the time to put your steak on and all the rest of it with a nice fresh fire. And by the time the main course is ready, the starters have just gone down just with one braai. Very easy, nobody breaking into any sweats. Depending on who your guests are, you might want to, if you've got lots of people and they're nice people and they're people you want there and you enjoy their company, then you might want to leave put the lid on and let them cook by themselves. If you're there and you're braaiing somewhere and you're not particularly, I don't know, I get asked to braai sometimes, but maybe you're not engaged with the people, you don't know the people or whatever, and you fancy a little bit of quiet time, or you be in your own space, you can, of course, make yourself look very busy by doing this manually, not doing it with the lid on. Same method, just keep the chicken around the periphery of the coals, and you can move them in and out and turn them over and do this manually, and get a fantastic result too. So if you don't want company, you can do this manually. If you want company, put the lid on and go and enjoy your guests, and it's fantastic. Always have the backstop coal going for the main course. This is another favorite as well. So Sunday is often for us a roast leg of lamb or whatever, chicken, and again, dead easy. And you'll notice here, this was done on a rainy day, Clive. So all I've done is I've gone outside, 30 seconds, put the starter on. When that's ready, tipped it into the fire on sides like this. All of this prep's been done inside. There's roast potatoes, lovely roast vegetables. I think that's pork in there. And lid on, and that's it. Forget about it. Go back inside until it's cooked. And it's the most magnificent food. The veg, the potatoes, crispy, crispy, crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside, beautiful crackling. You just can't beat the taste of a braai, a roast leg done like this. So let's have a look at this one now. So how do you think this meal was cooked? Again, so the art of a braai is it's just should be a non-event. It's just easy, easy, easy. So this it's probably taken, I don't know, 10 minutes to prepare. Literally, there's leeks take about 5 minutes. I think just before the food is ready, I would sort of say, okay, the meat's just about done. Liesl will put that in the frying pan, and that's just done very quickly in butter. That steak was done on a direct fire, and so were the prawns were put just on the indirect fire for a bit while I was doing the steak, and then right at the end, just quickly put them over the direct heat for a minute or two, just to give them some color. And then, of course, the salad. So simple, no big drama. A pile of plates on one side of the table, the food there, people just come past and put food on their plates. You sit relaxed, informal, and magnificent food for very little effort. Same with these. Similar thing. So you'll see these are ribs, and this is one of my favorites as well. I've put chicken and ribs on there. Again, now you could just put the lid on and leave it. Or if you wanted to have some of your own space, you could obviously do it manually, but in the same way, sort of an indirect fire. And the prep for these ribs, you'll see them in all the supermarkets. Your butcher will have them as well. There's two ways of doing it, and I prefer the long way. Of course, the long way is usually the best way. The hardest way is usually the best way, as my dad always taught me. And so what I do is just put them in a big baking tray with some water underneath, put tin foil over it, and put them in the oven at a low temperature, maybe 100, and let them go for hours and hours and hours. Of course, the quick way is you can just do it in the microwave. And then once you've brought them out of that and they're sort of par cooked, you just get ketchup and brown sauce. So 2 parts brown sauce, 1 part ketchup, and a jar of honey. And you mix it up, and it makes a beautiful sauce, that glaze to put over the ribs. And they're spectacular. Again, they just slide off the bone. And it's a beautiful meal to cook and to eat. Very, very easy. So what about the day after? Because invariably, and particularly in South Africa, where people, you have a chop and dop, bring in braai, there's always food left over, lots and lots of food. And even if I open my fridge now, there's just containers and containers of leftover braai food, and which is an annoyance of mine because we have to get rid of that somehow. Then I want to braai the new stuff, but we got to get rid of the old stuff. So this is the braai pie. And it's a fantastic thing. Again, so simple. All you need is puff pastry. You whatever leftover meat, cut it into little bits from yesterday. You can just mix it all up. You can have whatever you want in there. Add some onion, mushroom, gravy, just some seasoning to taste. Pinch it closed, and put it in these grills. And this will take about 15 minutes. Just be careful because it catches quite quickly. So have it quite high off the grill, and just turn it and let it brown. But this is delicious, and some of the favorite food, of course, is the day after food in the form of the braai pie. Very, very good eating and simple. So to summarize, then I think we've got to understand the laws of fire. of course, not the rules, the laws, these things that like in the same league as gravity. And we must understand optimal braai design. People listening here, like Stephen J, all these guys, Clive, these are guys who've placed thousands of implants and who could make any system work very well, because they understand the laws and they adapt things to get the result. And the other way is to just use the system that's been designed for the specific job that you're trying to do. So braai is a long procedure. It's a sport. It starts at the butcher when you go shopping. It starts with the banter there. It starts with selecting your meat. That's a sport. It starts with the prep, and it just carries on going with the fire. It's all about kuluma and banter and enjoying the company. So it's a long event, and it's something. It's not just this is something to be dragged out and just enjoyed. It's not unusual in South Africa for the braai to be finished eventually, only for another fire to be started, because you've got hungry a little bit now again, and you might do some little extra bits and pieces. So keep it simple. Stick to those basics. If you get the basics right, you'll always have a very good time of it. And practice. This lockdown period is a great time to practice. And go online. If you don't have a Weber, buy a Weber. It's absolutely the best thing out there. There's a few similar things now. Those green ones, I forget their names now, they're fantastic as well. Same principles. They've got the right design, best materials. But this is the sort of thing you need to look out for. And make it seem effortless, because it is effortless if it's done right. And it's absolutely a 12-month season, even in Scotland. Come rain or shine, snow, we braai all the time. And it's a big part of, I suppose, what we do, because it encourages a lot more than just the food. So implants as well. Our system accelerates these accelerated treatments that we probably would be wise to move to as our time becomes even more under pressure in terms of the post-lockdown protocols we're going to have to follow, I guess. And, as this is a system that's been designed for this, Coaxis is now 17 years old. Can you believe it? Well proven. We've been doing this for a very long time. And so our system has been designed for accelerated treatments since way before it was sexy to do them. And now it's not only sexy to do them, it actually becomes essential. So consider that if you're not using them. Our system, I think, is the Weber of braais. It's used with best materials. It's over-engineered. Everything is designed to work with biology, and it's designed for simplicity, which is very much what the Weber braai is too. So thank you. I think that gives you hopefully some useful tips on the basics. And I hope you found it useful. And if you found anything useful, please make a donation to the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice. And Clive, really, I commend what you've done now with these things, and it's a fantastic charity. And to have raised, I think it's more than 25,000 now with gift aid. It's phenomenal. And these things have been fantastic. So thank you.
Steve, thank you very much for an absolutely amazing presentation. Just superb the way you managed to bring the braai and implants together. Ingenious. We've got a few questions just for you to answer that been popped up. One from Chris was, any thoughts on the big green egg? That was one thing.
That's right.
Question from Alan Perry, whether you prefer coal or wood. And there was Stephen Jacob has been asking about the use of the vents on the top of the Weber. So 3 questions there just for you to wind up on.
Yeah. So the big green egg is fantastic. It's very similar to the Weber, and absolutely first class braai, very well designed. It sticks to all the laws and it's fantastic. So yeah, it's a big plus for that one. They're just a lot more expensive than Weber, and I don't know if there's any more benefit, but a fantastic braai.
Can I just, anybody that's clicking off now, can you please make sure you click on the donate button and give to the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice? So if you've not already donated, if you're tuning in from Doha, Dublin, England, anywhere around the world, South Africa, please support the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice. So again, please click and donate. Steve.
Yeah, so the other one, I think it was Alan Perry's question about wood or charcoal. And oh man, if you can get the right wood, absolutely wood every time. So we get this hardwood in South Africa, cirkelbos and kameeldoring and all sorts. And it really just puts such a different flavor on the meat. You can get it here, but you've got to sort of mortgage your house to get it. And it's a rare treat when we can get wood. So I usually just use charcoal. We order, I think, 20 bags at a time, and we get a delivery to the house. We've always got lots. But if I can get the wood, I do. What was the third question?
The third question was from Stephen Jacobs about whether you have the events, and we've got another question from Gillian Lennox about how do you clean your braai.
Okay, so the vents, Stephen, I've found that I always just leave them wide open, full open. I used to fiddle about with them, but sometimes that killed the fire for me too much, and I regretted it later. So these days, I just keep it the bottom and the top vents wide open, and we get good results like that. I find they can never be too hot, particularly with indirect cooking.
And there was a question from Gillian Lennox about how you clean the braai.
So that's actually an excellent question, Gillian. And the answer is we don't do it very well at all, deliberately. So we'll always just clean the ashes off so it can breathe nicely. The Weber's got this thing at the bottom vent. You can sort of turn it like this, and it's all of the powder falls underneath, and you can just get rid of it like that. As for the braai grid, I never ever clean that. We want that thing to be worn and keep all of the flavors. So what I do is I put the fire on, and when I put the lid on once it's hot, and I'll leave the lid on for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and so it's nice and hot, and that heats the grill up very, very hot. And then I'll take the lid off and just give it a bang with the tongs, and that gets rid of most of the stuff. But that's very sterile then, and you get all those flavors. So I'd be most upset if someone cleaned my grill, with sunlight soap or something. I'd be very upset.
Excellent, Steve. Let's just see if there's any final questions. Everybody's saying thank you. And people, Jamie, I've messaged you the link to the Just Giving site, and I'll email everybody the link in case they've not got it. I said, please support the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice. We've raised a phenomenal amount, and it'd be just great if we get that little bit more before the end of lockdown 2020 webinars in a week's time. So next week, we've got some clinical and non-clinical webinars. We've got, who have we got? We've got Colin Campbell from the Campbell Academy talking about his near encounters with the GDC. We have Stephen Jacobs, who's been busy on the message board, is doing a golf webinar. So he's going to be interviewing a golf pro. So that'll be of interest to all our golfing colleagues. Arshad Ali is going to be doing a masterclass on curries. So another one for the foodies there to look forward to. And a week tonight, we have Professor Jason Leach, the clinical director of the NHS in Scotland, has kindly agreed to do an interview with Lockdown 2020. And the grand finale will be the Lockdown 20 karaoke. So 1 week more of Lockdown 20, and let's just try and get those donations coming in. Steve, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much to Southern Implants, not just for supporting this webinar, but for the encouragement that you've given me over the past 18 months. Steve, have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
This is Rona Bailey from the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice in Glasgow. We really wanted to thank you so much for all the support that you've given us over the last few weeks. We looked at your Just Giving link today, and the last time I looked it was at 5,000. It's now over 6,000, and I just can't express our absolute gratitude that you've helped us in this way. And the hospice is still fully functioning with patients and families, as you would expect, and we are part of the COVID-19 approach. So thank you so much for all your help and all the equipment that people have given us as well. Well done, guys. Thanks.